So we have Ivan here, and he wants to pivot into technology consulting. He comes from an information systems management background, and I'm actually really excited to hear more a little bit about this because I was like, oh, so it shouldn't be that much of a lift because to be honest, I think you have the technical skills that come with it. It's just a matter of like the consulting part. That's probably the one you're working about, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. So Ivan's also based in Germany. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what's the landscape in technology consulting there, other than the big firms, of course. But I will say that when it comes to consulting, it's going to be the same all across. Like the skills you need will still be the same no matter where you go. So I'll first like ask you, can you tell me like what's the extent to your experience in technology, either technical on the business side, maybe on the industry side too?
Yeah, I would say also let please introduce myself a little bit. So I my bachelor in information system management too in Germany. I'm doing also my master here in Berlin.
Okay.
My background is so I'm focusing my career on SAP consultancy, on RPA, also automation and process enhancement. So a little bit from process management too. And yeah, I would say it's not about to focus in the industry. It's more about process automation, so RPAs.
Okay.
Operation right now.
Okay. I think you actually have a lot of technical skills that are important right now in the industry. So I think like on that end, you should be fine. So when it comes to the soft skills that you have, like, did you have any experiences working in teams or as a leader or leading some kind of project?
Yeah, so I was the coordinator for an NGO organization here in
Okay.
Berlin. And yeah, I will say my social skills are very good. I don't know. So I work with 2, 3 teams here in Germany. And yeah, so I know so what is the kind of work working with a development team. And yeah, I would say as a leader, not yet too much. It's I must still growing these skills, but
Okay.
yeah, on my way.
Okay. So I think like when it comes to leadership, a lot of people think like, oh, I need to do it in my job or I need to do it at like a school project, but you can also do a lot of self projects, like self and personal projects. Have you been doing any side projects on the side where like maybe you're coding something or you're working with someone on something?
Yeah, so I would say I'm working with my girlfriend, development of website, so web development, like my hobby, tech background. And yeah, so I would say I am there developing, I don't know, more than 5, 6 sites, 6 websites.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like my my parallel career. Yeah.
So when you are developing these websites, you're working with clients, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
To sell my job, you know.
So when you're working with clients for the websites, are you doing all the work or in terms of like talking about the requirements, like, hey, how do you like this button or how do you like this form? What kind of conversations do you typically have with them?
Yeah, as I said before, I have to take all the what do you say? So what does the client wants? Also really wants the most have positions from the product and the nice have.
Okay.
So I like so that's what I learned from my from my bachelor degree because you have a lot of features and there are some like this is possible to develop right now or maybe we can escalate in a next iteration.
Okay.
And I have to talk about it and explain to the client because they want. So sometimes they say, I want to e-commerce, and it's not yet. Let us first, I don't know, make a little website and maybe later.
Okay. Actually, I think this is a really good starting point. Even though you say you don't have much leadership experience at work, this is technically leadership skills because you're not following orders from someone. You're the one that's taking initiative on this. So I would say like on your resume, if you want to highlight this as much as you can. So in this case, like you could put a whole section on the bottom and say like personal projects or side projects or something like that, web development projects, and then list out the clients that you're working with, the types of industry they're in, what kind of like things that you've been doing. Was it on the developing side, or is it on the design side? Is it on the consulting side? And you would really want to bring out the consulting side, because I think you have the technical skills. So even if you maybe do want to go into tech consulting and like RPA, then you want to kind of bring out the consulting side of your web development. Otherwise, if you bring out too much of your web development, they're like, oh, we're going to put in your web development then, because you're making yourself more into web than you are in RPA. That's what you want to do as a consultant. Yeah. So really, really emphasize the consulting part there. So, because I think like in your job, you're not currently using any client facing skills. You're probably doing like teamwork and whatnot, but not client facing. So the side projects, that's like going to be the part that you want to talk about the most whenever they ask questions about, tell me about a time where you did blah, blah, blah with a client, or if like someone said they want this, but really it wasn't possible, which seems like a conversation you have all the time. Like the e-commerce example, that is a really good example to use. So you may think like, just because it's not your main job or your main thing, use that experience to show that you have those consulting experiences.
Okay, yeah, maybe, I didn't realize that. But
yeah, I think most people think the same thing. I thought the same thing too, until I was like, wait, I have really good consulting experience here, but it's just not my main job or my main major, if anything.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, because I have to give them structure to sell my.
Right. Yeah, and like when you work on your resume, you really want to use those keywords. Like if you see on the keywords that they have on their job description, say like consulted, or maybe even provided, or anything like that, the particular verbs, the particular nouns that they're using, put that into your resume too. So when they scan your application through either their online portal or whatnot, it will tell them like, oh, you do have these keywords they're looking for in consulting, and vice versa when it comes to the technical part, which I think you'll have no problem. But on your resume itself, like just make sure to put those keywords if they have those keywords that they want.
Okay, I got it. I got you. Okay.
So at least like the first level you'll be able to go through, and then after that in the interview process, when they ask you all these questions about like how you work with a difficult client or a difficult teammate, try to use times where you were a leader or you worked in a consulting like engagement, just like the web development. One of the things that they always ask when it comes to like some case interview is, how do you prioritize? And it does seem like you already do that by the like, what would you must have and what would you would have or would like to have? And that kind of conversation is what consultants deal with all the time. Otherwise, we'll just like be doing projects forever.
Okay. Yeah, prioritizing, I think it's very important for developing a product, and that it's a consultant too. Yeah.
And if there are even clients in different countries or different industries than what you're interested or even in right now, that's even better, because like a website for a nonprofit will be very different than a website for a restaurant.
Yeah, indeed, I was also developing a website for an NGO, and it's totally different.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be very similar to if you did a consulting project with an NGO or with a food industry. They value different things, and that is already something that you can learn from that.
Yeah, sorry, I'm making notice for helping me. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's like so. I know the meaning of that in German.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as you see, you say before, I think all the consultancy skills are in the same direction. From the world, and I wanted to know how I have to spring to the consultancy file, the consultancy industry, or maybe how I could find. So what would you say? So what I have to do to get calls from the consultancy?
Okay. Industry. How to stand out?
Yeah.
Okay. So we always like to say consulting is a people industry, it's people business. So that's why everyone says you have to network, you have to get a referral, get some kind of recommendation from someone that's within the firm. So I would even say like, look into the kind of firms you're interested in. My guess is you're interested in tech. So look into consulting firms that may be focusing on RPA. Is actually the field you want to go into for tech consulting, is it RPA?
So I am in that way, as I don't know if RPA, SAP consultancy is like, yeah, it's like, I don't know, two different ways.
Yeah.
For example, I am, as of right now in Siemens, programming SAP. So I am, sorry. So I am, so automating processes within. It's just like, yeah, there is a gap between these two words, and I would say I am in a good way.
Yeah, I think a lot of clients would want that though. So that's why it would make you very attractive to play up the RPA. Unless you're not interested in RPA, then don't even mention that on your resume. I mean, you could if you want to. It will make you look more technical than if you were completely business or web side. But I would say that when it comes to how to stand out, I would start by reaching out to firms, or at least figure out what firms you're interested in that are doing what you want to do. Do you have an idea like what you're interested in technology, or you're kind of open to whatever they have?
Like, so here in Germany, Capgemini, Deloitte, also industries like PVC, and these three like the and Mazars. Yeah, these four I am really interested in. I had a meeting with Mazars, so I had 2 rounds with Mazars, but then in the end they decided for another candidate, and yeah, but I was in Siemens.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I would say that from that, I would definitely say look into where you're interested in there and then start reaching out to people. That's like one big way to stand out. But to be honest, like that's just the baseline. It's not a really great way to stand out because they're kind of expecting everyone to either have the skills and experience as the baseline and then to get an interview have at least a referral, because a lot of these firms, because they're people business, they almost always do their hiring from just referrals. It's very hard to actually get a job without a referral or without through like a feeder school or a target school for recruitment. But if you do have a few people that you can, I would reach out to a few people, not just one person, and then stick to that one person. So if you want to do on LinkedIn, or if you do like, and actually the best way for LinkedIn is looking to see who are the people in those firms that have worked at Siemens. Now it would be like an even better way to see how would it transition, what's the difference. So when you reach out to them on either LinkedIn, or if you can find the convention of the spelling for the email address, if you were to go, let's say for example Deloitte, if you know that the convention is like first name dot last name, I'm not entirely sure to be honest, then try to use their name that you found on LinkedIn and reach out to them that way and say like, hey, I saw that you are at Deloitte and you came from Siemens. I'm also from Siemens, and I'm really curious to learn about your journey there. So that's actually a really great way to learn more about their journey, and then eventually do the same for other people. I would really try to take at least like 2 to 3 engagements, like either from phone calls or email exchanges or video calls or anything like that. Learn more about their jobs, learn about their journey into consulting or into Deloitte, and then also maybe their personal experience on whatever they're doing with the technology. And then once they get to a certain point, you could say like, hey, how would you like to help me out get a job at Deloitte? And in that case, then you could start to say like, is there a referral process? Like, would you be open to referring me? Be completely honest. Don't try to like put it down their throats like you have to refer me. But that's a really good way to say like, hey, and then they know your background by that point before you even ask for a referral, and they know you come from Siemens and they came from Siemens. So that's even a better way, because now the recruiter will know like, oh, they came from Siemens and so did this person, which means that Siemens probably better prepared them. So I would probably want to do that. And to be honest, I'm pretty sure there's people going from Siemens to Deloitte. Like I have like no doubts, or even not just Deloitte, it could be Capgemini too. So that's like definitely a good way to go for it. Otherwise, you could just reach out through LinkedIn. You could do both. Maybe like you don't have the naming convention properly, so you have one for the email and one from LinkedIn. They probably personally get a lot of messages on LinkedIn, so you really need to make sure when you reach out to them, do a short snippet saying like, oh, I noticed that you were coming from Siemens and that you're currently at this firm. I'm really interested in doing that as well. I would love to learn more about it first. Also mention that they want to learn about them and also learn about the firm and also their experience. So that way it's not like just going right into it, say, hey, I want a job.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I was doing this network connection in LinkedIn. but yet with email or I don't know, with personal network too.
Yeah.
In the following months, I'm going to join a club for consultancy from my university. And it's like experience, a training for me.
Yeah.
For me, that was a very good step. But I don't know, I want to know everything, how to go it faster. And yeah, I don't know. My goal is at the end of next year's, I want to be in a consultancy company. As a student, because I'm not, no, 2023, I am ready with my master.
Do you happen to know if your school is a target school or feeder school for any of these firms? Do they recruit at your school?
No, so I don't know, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, so I would definitely look into that. If you, most schools do have some kind of recruitment center or job center, career center. If you reach out to them or go on their website or portal, if you guys have something like that, and see if those firms apply or actually recruit from there. If you can, then you could talk to the people at your career center and say like, hey, who's the recruiter for our school? If they don't have that name, then you may have to look somewhere else on their website. But I would say that that's a really good way, because one of the big ways that they do recruit is through the feeder schools or the target schools. And if you happen to be one of them for all of these other companies, then that's a really great way, because they do have a quota for like, oh, I'm going to apply, I'm going to recruit 5 people from this, or I'm going to recruit 10 people from this. And if you happen to be there, then you can reach out proactively to the recruiter and say like, hey, what's the process? I am very interested in this because I have experience in all of these skills. And I also do have consulting experience through web development. So if you mention all of that, then they'll definitely want to reach out to you. So you want to do it earlier than everyone else, because if everyone else is just applying through the portal or applying normally and have the school up there, then that's like, well, now you're kind of competing with everyone else. But if you reach out to them directly, if you can happen to get that email address, or as I mentioned, if they mentioned the Career Center gave the name, but you don't have the email address, now start to look into like the naming convention of the email address, and you could try to send it directly to them. Another way that you could do it is, and this is sometimes like I've had people do this too, is that if you know someone within the firm, you can ask like, what's the email address is of this person? And I know people who have been reaching out for people at Accenture, they ask me like, hey, what's the naming convention at Accenture kind of thing for like the dot, that's what we do is like the dot, but then it's sometimes a little bit weird because sometimes you put the middle name, sometimes it's abbreviated, but if you can do that, they can potentially reach out directly to them through email. Or vice versa, if you can do it yourself, if you already know the naming convention. So I think you mentioned that you had an interview before at Mathers, and then you can probably use the same convention that you see the emails that you receive and do the same thing for other people that are there.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the advice. Yeah. I have to still train for this opportunity. Yeah, I'm aiming to gain more skills for the technical, but yeah, I think I have enough skills, but I want to still learn about that. Yeah. So I don't know another advice will you give me to get more into it?
Yeah. So how many languages do you know, by the way? Because I know you came from many different places. So that actually could be a really good way for you to say like, hey, I have these languages, I'm fluent in these many languages. And that's a really good way to enter markets.
Yeah, so I speak German, by the way, English and Spanish. I come from Bolivia.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I would actually say that's a really good thing to have, because I think most people in tech, they either just have the language of their home country and that's it. They may have a second language, not third like you do. So I would definitely reach out to them, put on your resume that you have these 3 languages. And I think like, because you come from an international background of like all these different countries and languages, you already are going to stand out at a global firm, because you're going to be working with many different people, either from the client side or your team side. So that's why I think that's also something to really stand out and say like, hey, I have these skills in tech, in consulting, and in languages, because languages is really important for consulting. I even had an experience where at a client of ours, we personally chose someone that spoke Spanish just to work with our client side in Peru, and no one else could do it because we didn't know Spanish. So he had a very important role in that project because of that. So I would definitely play up those languages. So if there's anything where maybe they're like, why would you like this job? Why are you interested in consulting? You could talk about how you can work with many different people. And you personally have done that from school and from your personal life. And also you have all these languages too, that you want to be able to put them to practice and do it in the workplace too. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can play up your application. And to be honest, I think you're going to be a very attractive candidate for a lot of people because of the fact that you're like multinational, your languages, your technical skills, and your consulting experience from the side. I would definitely, all you have to do is just play it up on your application, on your resume. Make sure that you have all the keywords that they have. I mean, don't lie. Just make sure that it actually is accurate, but you're playing up your pros, your benefits, and then also do the networking on the side too, through like people who come from Siemens, people who come from your school, and then also reach out to your school's career center if they know the recruiter. And then if that case, you could reach out to the recruiter and mention, like basically pitch yourself to them in an email. And also, hey, like, can we have a phone call to talk about the process? And it may eventually become an informal interview. It may not, you may not go through the general process. They may recommend you to go to the general process that all the students are doing, but at least that when you apply, they'll know like, okay, I'm going to look out for Ivan.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think also I am going at a good way for a consultancy. Yeah, I planned that. So the technical skills, the consultancy skills, that's why I help with this NGO organization. And yeah, I'm in my last steps to get into it. Yeah, and about my languages, that was also a very long way. I'm learning German, I don't know, 12 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. Indeed, I speak more German than English.
But your English seems pretty good, to be honest. I think like it's definitely good for if you were to be on an English speaking engagement. You may have a few issues with like very complex words or very technical words or explaining something very complex, but if you were to work with, like, let's say a German client that had English speakers in the room, I think they would probably know the best too. You'll probably work with them.
Yeah. That's why I wanted also to do my master in English. My bachelor was in German.
Yeah.
The master in English, it's more international too.
Yeah, you did a lot of planning. I think you're honestly ready. It's just a matter of making your application great and reaching out to people so that you know who are the right people and when.
Yeah, I have to highlight or remark these keywords to write them in my CV, and I don't know. I have also a personal website. So I think I did everything, but just like have my way to the interviews.
Yeah, and if they have any applications where they're asking for attachments, you can also put in like a PDF form of your website, like basically a portfolio. So any of your clients that you worked with, like you could take screenshots, put them together, put some text there and say like, here's the decisions we made kind of thing. I mean, because like, even though you have a website, if you put it as an attachment, it's way easier. You could show, I mean, I guess it depends on how confidential it is, but your websites, you can do it. You can also do any of the work that you've been doing at Siemens. If it's confidential, don't do it. But if it's something that's like public knowledge, then
from Siemens I can't post stuff.
But when it comes to if you had any school projects, then I would definitely show that off too. I actually attached my school project. I don't know how much that actually helped, but a lot of the experiences I learned and the skills I learned through that experience also really helped me.
You're right, because I did also interesting projects in my university. For example, right now I'm developing a web app for bearing points, and it's a very good practice for that. Yeah, you're right. I mean, so I feel right now that I'm ready for the Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Do
you have any other questions?
I think no yet. Yes. No. So this. No, I think you helped me a lot.
Okay.
No, I was checking also the group in Facebook. So by the way, I wanted to, so if you could briefly explain me what is this, like a course, like a master class for consultancy with I don't know, when I get an interview, I have to have like a TEDs for consultancy topics and things like that.
Are
Or
you talking about like an exam or an interview?
yeah, yeah. And so like the exam in the interview, like an assessment for a new candidate.
I think it really does depend on the firm and the country because to my knowledge, the one in the US does not have exams for many of the firms that I know. So I don't know if that's different where you are, but I do know that they have something called like assessment center in some firms in some countries where you go through a lot of different things. It's not just like one exam, and it's not even a written exam. What they do have is like, here's client scenarios and situations, which is exactly what I mentioned is like, what would you do if a client was going to do this, or if the client disagreed? And that's, then you can bring all of the experience that you have from your web development gig and use that. Another one is like a tech showcase that I've seen people do. And that's where they would show like, here's how you can use technology in this industry, and think a bit more of as like a consultant or entrepreneur. How would you do it? And you may want to use slides. You don't have to use slides. You may want to use it. But another one is just like the typical strength-based interview, which is very behavioral interview. Are you familiar with strength-based interviews? Because I think it's more in Europe.
No, no yet.
Okay, so those are questions like, what do you like to do on the weekend? It's not a behavioral interview specifically for work, but it is something that will tell them a little bit more about what do you like. So in that case, like, let's say I like to go swimming on the weekends. And then when you go swimming on the weekends, you have to explain why you like swimming. And it will tell them a little bit more about yourself as an individual. So maybe if I say like, I like swimming in the weekends because then I can work out, then it will show me that I am disciplined, that I like to do things. I like to stay active. So it's not a question where it's like, what's your strengths and weaknesses? Tell me about a time when you did this, or tell me about a time you led. So like those can be very simple, to be honest. Like everyone could have the same answers or it would be boring. That's why they use a lot of strength-based interview questions instead, to really learn about you as a person outside of work. Or, I mean, it doesn't have to be outside of work, could be at work too, but those are the types of questions you can expect to have. So I'll definitely prepare for those. But I've not heard of any actual written exam. I think like if you go for a very technical role, they may have a technical exam or.
So I mean the case, so the tech
Oh,
case.
the case. Okay. Yeah, that's not a written exam at all. That's really mostly like they either give you the case either orally, or they'll tell you through chat, or they'll send you a document, or they'll screen share. Most of the times what I've heard is that, at least like during the pandemic, they've been saying it out loud. Like you have to hear it and then you have to process everything. You could ask questions if you want, if you miss anything. Another one is that they give you it ahead of time, like maybe 24 hours or 48 hours in advance, and you have time to prepare for it. And then at the time of the interview, it's like a presentation of your case. So I've seen both of those primarily around the pandemic. Mostly because you can't do it in person. But when I did it in person, they gave me a piece of paper in front of me and they looked at me as I did it. So after that, it really is the articulation part, the speaking of actually talking about like, what's your solution? How did you get there? You need to explain the logic behind it. You can't just say like, the answer is this, and then just stop. You have to talk about like, well, because of this part of the case, that I want to explore a little bit more about that part of the case. And then you can ask questions to the interviewer. It depends if it's interviewee led or interviewer led. And on my channel, I do have videos of both examples, so you can kind of see what's the difference. But interviewer led is that they ask questions and then you have to answer. The interviewee led is that they're just going to sit there until you ask questions. And in my opinion, that's actually like the very consulting way. It's actually what consultants tend to do more, is that you're asking questions to them because they tend to not know what you know or what you want to know, which is probably going to be very similar to your experience with web development. Is like, they're going to be like, yeah, just make a website. And then you have to ask questions like, well, what do you care about the most? What's your budget? What's your timeline? Those are the kind of questions that will come up in the case that you have to come up with. And if they don't, then those are things that you have to mention that like, oh, I see that the timeline is 3 years. Because of that, we need to have a higher budget, something like that. And I think like a lot of people use the case as a way to show their communication skills, their logic, their problem solving. Creativity is actually something that's big. People forget about. It's like, don't just be a robot and do what business people would do what you would do and bring your own personal taste into it. But what some people forget is that you're trying to be a person too. A lot of people think that there's like only one way, you have to do it the right way, and there's no right way.
The framework.
Yeah, there's no, there have frameworks, but it's not the answer. It's the framework's just framing what you have in your mind. So that's where you have to use a lot of your own energy and know, like, how do I do this as myself? This is where your personal brand comes in. What kind of consultant are you? Are you someone who's very thorough? Are you someone who's creative, detail oriented, logic based? Not even logic based, maybe people based. And then there's so many different ways you can approach it. There's no right or wrong way. There might be a better way and a worse way, but there's no right or wrong way. And you also have to realize that there's a person in front of you too. I think that's like the hardest part I usually see from people who do cases, is that they're so in their heads about what should I do. They forget there's a person in front of them, that like whatever you're doing, just imagine that they're the client. You can't just completely ignore them and just put your head down and do all the work. You have to also treat them very professionally, treat them as if they're the client. In some cases, you might even want to treat them as a client in a way, the questions you ask, like, oh, so you mentioned that you're interested in this. Like technically they're the interview, but they give you a piece of paper, but you could also, depending on how they presented themselves, of like, we would like a website. If they say that, you know that they're the client. If they say like Falcon University wants a website, then you know that they're not the client. The whatever's on the case they're just basically the interviewer for the case. So you kind of have to notice these little details to know how to phrase yourself in the actual case interview. And also know that, do the typical things like say, how are you doing? I thank you so much. Like all those kind of things you would typically do in an interview or with a client in this case. So with those cases, I think like that's just basically the basics of a case interview. I have a lot of videos on going into like what you should do to do well in it, what kind of cases to expect. In the Facebook group, there's a lot of also practice cases, and also PrepLounge that I did have a collaboration with also has a lot of cases. And over there, like you can get premium where you could get open case library of like over 108 cases out there, actual partners to practice with. These tend to be more management consulting, but if you're more interested in management consulting, there's a lot of tech roles within those. So it's also a good place to check. So I think, like, to be honest, with your background, I think you're looking for more technical. So you may not need that kind of management consulting, but if people are interested in like tech strategy or more on the business side of tech, then that's a very good place to go, is the PrepLounge. And that's where you can get, if you look right now, you could get 15% off on my promo code downstairs.
Wait, it is till today, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna check that. yeah. Because I did for 6 weeks, I think. Mm-hmm. That. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think it's a very powerful tool. Getting more experience with the case.
Yeah. And practice makes perfect. Like I know a lot of people who just do one case and they think they did it right, but really it's the practice of being natural, which is why I say, like, remember there's a person in front of you. If you're just a robot giving all your information, they're going to be like, well, if that's how you're going to be like with the client won't like that. So they're probably not even going to accept you. So it's really important to be natural and be yourself, and not too, I mean, everyone's going to be nervous, but try to not be that nervous.
Yeah, I like to like your phrases of not logic based, also people, but
yeah, exactly.
Be human. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was just checking this PrepLounge, and I think I'm going to join to the app, and work on that. Thank you a lot.
All right, if you have any questions, just let me know. I know technically the video would probably be ending, but if you have questions after that, you can message me on LinkedIn like you already do, and I'll hopefully be able to get you an answer.
Thank you a lot.